What is happening, fellow fanatics, and welcome back to the Polychromatic Pandemonium, where we break down the mind-bending, reality-warping, and utterly fantastic comics from the hallowed halls of Marvel. Today we're diving into a stacked week of releases, including The Incredible Hulk 63, where Betty Ross makes a shocking return, and Ultimate X-Men 39, where Jean Grey's powers go haywire, and Wolverine faces off from a blast from the past. We also have The Punisher number 35, so get ready because it's a packed docket. Buckle up! New Mutants, Volume 2, Issue 7. So Josh and David are just chilling in their dorm, getting ready for the day. When David and Sophia bounce to get grub, Josh, though, decides to opt out of the lunch date with Lori. Instead, our boy decides he wants to get his thoughts on paper, penning a letter home to the Rents. He spilled the tea about his classes and what life was like at the Xavier Institute. You know, just regular day at mutant school. Lunch rolled around and Josh linked up with Julian. Turns out Jean had dropped the detention hammer on Julian. Ouch. Meanwhile, Danny and David were getting their caffeine fix at the Grindstone Cafe, and Danny, being the stand-up gal she is, pushed Danny to reach out to Josh. Yeah, with Josh's sketchy past affiliation with the Reavers, but Danny knew the dude needed some support. And speaking of new partnership, Victor hits up Shan, ditching Wolverine as his advisor. Claimed they just weren't vibing, which, honestly, fair. Later, Shan paid a visit to Amara, who, still in her coma from her crucifixion and subsequent healing by the angel in Uncanny X-Men 423, and read her some letters from her old squad. Pretty heavy stuff. When David finally hauled his butt back to the dorm, he gave Josh the lowdown on Amara. Next thing you know, Josh and Julian were sneaking into her room. Josh, flexing his healing powers, woke her up from her coma. But whoa, talk about an explosive awakening. She caused a massive blast before splitting. David was not thrilled, to say the least, and confronted Josh, who got totally heated and stormed off. The next day, Professor X calls an assembly and lays down the law about that incident, and then hauls Josh and Julian into his office, double detention. He laid it out. Amara was gone, and she didn't want to be found or helped. Later, Jean-Paul told Julian to swing by his office the next day, and Danny absolutely lit into Josh, roaring that Amara was family to her. Intense, right? Well, fast forward a couple weeks, and Josh sees his parents roll up on the school. Josh, bless his little heart, thought they were pulling him out of school. Plot twist, they were actually making the school his new legal guardian. Talk about a mind bender. After his folks left, Danny tries to be all warm and fuzzy, insisting that they're now his family. But Josh, being the prickly pear he is, totally blows her off. Some folks just aren't ready for found family life, huh? NYX, Volume 1, Issue 2. All right, my archivists, our story kicks off in two very different but equally chaotic homes. First, we have Cameron Palmer still shaking from the bizarre incident she witnessed at school the other day, while her boyfriend Sam plays Mr. Mom and tries to get her to eat. Meanwhile, over at the Nixon pad, Mama Nixon, who is having a rough morning, stumbles upon her son Ty's secret white powder stash. Oh, you know what happens next, right? Down the toilet it goes. And Ty, obviously not thrilled, flips out, causing a full-blown family brawl. Kitten, totally fed up with the chaos, storms out for school. And honestly, can you blame her? Things don't get any chillier for Kitten once she gets to the school gates. As soon as she steps foot inside, her teacher, Miss Palmer, drags her straight to the principal's office for questioning. While Kitten's getting the third degree, a slick kid named Hector strolls in, slips his 20 to the security guard, and ensures his brown paper bag goes unnoticed. Smart move? Back in the office, Miss Palmer tries to get Kitten to spill the beans about yesterday's incident, but Kitten's lips are sealed. After getting sprung, she heads to the hall, but before she can make her escape, Hector catches up with her, and with a smirk, he says he's got a little surprise for her. Next thing you know, he pulls out a gun. Just as Hector pulls the trigger, Miss Palmer, who's been watching, tries to get Kitten's attention for a little heart-to-heart talk. Talk about timing. But here's where it gets wild. When Kitten opens her eyes, the bullet's just hanging there in midair, inches from her forehead. The kids all around her are frozen solid. Kitten, feeling like a total boss, skips over to Hector and starts laying down some serious threats. But just as she's getting her swagger on, reality comes crashing back with a deafening bang. Kitten spins around and her world shatters. Her friend Kara is there, cradling their teacher's lifeless body, blood staining the hallway floor. Flash forward 6 months and Principal Wiseman shows up at Cameron's house trying to coax her back to work, but she's not having any of it. He drops the bombshell that no one's even heard from Kitten since the shooting. Later that very same day, Cameron gets another visitor. It's Kitten, and she finds her former teacher bleeding in the bathtub. Cameron had tried to end it all. I mean, this story is just wow. What a ride, right? Punisher, Volume 4, Issue 35. So things kick off in a shadowy room where Frank Castle is playing nursemaid. He's feeding some seriously sickly looking dude, a guy he rescued from the auction in the last issue. There's something mysterious bubbling in that stew, but the comic's keeping mum about what it is. Now, for those of you who've been following along, if you saw the tape Frank watched last time, you probably have a hunch as to who the stranger is. Meanwhile, across town, while Soap is hilariously getting roughed up by a troop of Girl Scouts. Yes, actual Girl Scouts. Spidey, Daredevil, and Wolverine are trying to make sense of their last chaotic encounter with the Punisher. They figure they're not in any real danger themselves since Frank usually avoids collateral damage, so they decide to keep on his tail and try to bring him to their version of justice. Fast forward a bit after Soap snaps out of his totally wild daydream where he's a ripped, shouting god beheading bartenders. Yes, you heard that right too. Frank decides it's time to stir the pot. He lures our superhero trio right into a trap by, well, doing what he does best, taking down an ex-con. And wouldn't you know it, the heroes show up right on cue. Frank's got a surprise waiting in a nearby building. A bazooka. He lines it up and blast! He fires it straight at Wolverine, absolutely obliterating his entire midsection, from chest to calves. But don't worry, the indestructible adamantium skeleton is still intact, naturally. Despite the brutal hit, Logan somehow still screaming for help. Spidey, quick on the draw, swings up to the window Frank just blasted from, only to step right onto a pressure detonator in a room rigged with explosives. Our friendly neighborhood web-slinger is now stuck, frozen in place, knowing a single wrong move could set off a dozen bombs all around him. Talk about a bad day to forget your spider sense. Now, just when Frank's about to unleash an ultrasonic device to totally incapacitate Daredevil, Dee Dee pulls a fast one and punches his hand right through the wall from the other side and manages to break Castle's arm in the process. Boom! What follows is, to be honest, a bit of a snoozer. About 5 pages of surprisingly dry fight. And after all that, even Frank has to admit that particular plan wasn't exactly a stroke of genius. Sometimes even the Punisher has off days, right? The Incredible Hulk, Volume 2, Issue 63. All right, my Kennen keepers, our story picks up right when we left off, with the Hulk busting back into Nadia's diner to rescue her and the mysterious Mr. Blue from a swarm of krill. The Hulk makes a mind-bending discovery, though. The man he's known as Mr. Blue is none other than his late wife, Betty Ross. Ooh! Hearing the shocking revelations, the leader of home base is completely floored, realizing his opposition was one step ahead of him the entire time. Before the Hulk can get more answers, though, they're attacked yet again by the Krill. But the mastermind behind home base continues to theorize how Betty Ross managed to return to life when the Krill begin to swarm the Hulk yet again. As the creatures swarm around Betty and Nadia, the Hulk tosses them and the whole mass of Krill into the water tower, shortening out the creatures. This effort, however, allows the remaining beasts to swarm the Hulk and until one of them sinks his teeth into his skin and draws blood, and is promptly Hulk smashed. With the women recovering in the water tower, they discover the creatures are vulnerable to water, but the drama is just beginning. The chopper carrying Doc Samson and Sandra Verduga arrives as the two women talk. Nadia reveals she loves Bruce, heartbroken that Betty gave up her face for him. Back on the ground, the Hulk, with Bruce Banner's mind completely submerged, doesn't recognize that the helicopter is friendly and attacks it. The two women spot a rifle knocked from the helicopter as Sandra Verduga, now in her underwear, tries her own calming technique to subdue the Hulk. But Nadia, enraged by Sandra's attempt, aims the rifle at her. However, Betty, seeing what Sandra is trying to do, knocks the gun aside, causing Nadia to miss. But the gunshot is enough to set the Hulk off again. The chaos is a perfect distraction for the lone Krill to bite the Hulk's ankle and slip away with the blood sample. As Betty explains who she is, it's enough to convince Doc Samson that she's telling the truth. But they only have an hour of light left. Meanwhile, Home Base tracks the single Skrill, only to discover that the Hulk is hot on the trail of the creature that just bit him. Ooh, not good. Iron Man, Volume 3, Issue 74. All right, folks, the game done changed. This issue kicks off with Tony Stark, cool as a cucumber, dropping a bombshell on Chief of Staff Stu Conrad. The president is going to name me as the Secretary of Defense, and let me tell you, Stu Conrad pretty much loses his collective poop. We're talking about jaws on the floor, sputtering indignation. Tony Stark, the millionaire playboy womanizer with serious drinking problems? It's a fair point, honestly, but Tony, ever the smooth operator, calmly explains his reasoning. Because Birch has basically gone full on tech pirate, stealing and misusing Stark's patents, Tony needs to be in a position of power to ensure that his tech is used appropriately and not as a death trap. This isn't about power, this is about responsibility. Soon after, Tony shows up unannounced in an unidentified military base in Maryland. What's Birch doing there? Only showing off more stolen tech. Talk about rubbing salt in the wound, but then bam! Iron Man makes a grand entrance, not just for show, but to give a live demonstration of exactly why this stolen tech is a catastrophic failure. Imagine the look on Birch's face. Tony and Birch exchange some heated words, a classic hero villain spat, but during the back and forth, Tony clocks something crucial. Birch hasn't been informed of Tony's new earth shattering position. Tony was originally planning on dropping that bomb right there and then, a real mic drop moment. But he decides against it. Nah, it'll be way more effective to let Birch find out from somebody else, making the news hit even harder. The suspense is thicker than vibranium. When we cut back to Tony and the White House, deep in a meeting with Mr. Conrad and Artemis Pithens, a big shot from the White House. The discussion? How Tony is going to handle the inevitable grilling he's going to receive during his confirmation hearings. You know, all those skeletons in the closet, the Playboy past, the drinking, it's all going to get dragged out. They're basically prepping him for a verbal boxing match. And after the intense prep session, Tony heads home and gets down to some serious business. He sells off and relinquishes all connections that could potentially cause trouble or conflicts of interest with his upcoming Secretary of Defense position. This isn't just a career change, it's a complete life overhaul. Tony Stark is going all in. And then the big moment arrives. Tony stands before a massive crowd, delivering a speech that, in classic Stark fashion, boils down a truly audacious yet inspiring declaration. No one ever needs to die from war again. It's a heavy statement, a bold vision for a man stepping into a role of Secretary of Defense. This isn't just about managing conflicts, it's about fundamentally changing the nature of warfare itself. That's a pretty massive promise to present, especially for a guy with a past. But hey, it's Tony Stark. He dreams big, and now he's got the power to try to make it happen. The Spectacular Spider-Man, Volume 2, Issue 6. So this issue kicks off with Spider-Man swinging home, probably thinking about kicking back. He hits his apartment building with a bag full of groceries, changes back into civilian threads as Peter Parker, and just wants to chill. But surprise, his apartment is totally overrun. It turns out a bunch of his buddies have crashed the place for a video game marathon with Flash Thompson. Meanwhile, in some secret lab in Midtown, the notorious Dr. Otto Octavius is tinkering away, making his metal arms even more menacing. Back at Peter's pad, the video game session has officially turned into an all-nighter. Everyone's wired, playing late into the night, and then a moment that gives Peter a huge jolt of morale. It actually looks like Flash's video game character moved. This might seem small, but it's a massive step forward for Flash, who's been trying to recover from his brain damage. The next day dawns and we're at the always chaotic Daily Bugle. J. Jonah Jameson and Joe Roberts are locked into the classic headline battle. Robbie's pushing hard for the big story about the Palestinian delegation visiting New York and emphasizing its importance. But you know JJ, he's not having any of it. He overrides Robbie and slaps a headline about an explosion in Milwaukee onto the front page instead. And later that afternoon, over in Greenwich Village, Peter is still working with Flash. He's trying to get him to squeeze a small toy, continuing his physical therapy. But just then, Mary walks in, and she and Peter make plans for later that evening. And as MJ heads out, something incredible happens. Flash actually gives the toy a little squeeze. Another small but significant win for our pal Flash. But his patrol takes a dark turn when he's confronted by none other than Dr. Octopus on top of the bridge. Doc Ock, being the usual smug self, lays out a bizarre demand. He wants Spidey to take off his mask and parade through Times Square for the whole world to see. Naturally, Spider-Man refuses the ridiculous ultimatum. Octopus, ever the villain, promises that mask will come off just before he attacks. Doc Ock wastes no time in gaining the upper hand. Delivering a chilling revelation, he's juiced up his arms, making them 10 times stronger. He gives Spidey one last chance to unmask himself publicly. Again, Spidey refuses, and Doc Ock, with a sinister grin, guarantees the web slinger's true identity is about to be revealed, whether he likes it or not. But before Ock can make good on his threat, Spidey makes a desperate move. He scuttles away from his foe and plunges into the water below to escape. As Spider-Man disappears beneath the surface, Dr. Octopus simply waits, a chilling promise on his lips. When Spidey wakes up tomorrow, everything will have changed. What does Doc Ock have planned? And how will Spidey deal with a world turned completely upside down? Ultimate 6, Volume 1, Issue 4. So, from his digs in the Hamptons, Norman Osborn makes the phone call that sends shockwaves all the way to the White House. Next thing you know, the President of the United States is absolutely laying into Nick Fury. Why? Because Norman just ratted him out, spilling the beans that Fury's been holding Osborn and 4 other heavy hitters without a trial. Talk about a major no-no. Now Osborn's got a list of demands. Give him his son back, toss Fury in the slammer, and cough up a cool $100 million. If they don't pay the bill, he's threatening to drop the whole scandalous story live. And get this, Norman's got his crew with him. Octavius, Dylan, Kravinoff, and Marco, all geared up to take Fury down hard. This isn't a casual chat. Meanwhile, the Ultimates are already in the thick of it. Their Quinjet slamming right into the building where folks who worked on Kravinoff's show are hanging out. They're demanding to know where Craven is, but nobody's spilling the beans. So Fury just goes full lockdown, arrests everyone, and grabs everything. Captain America is giving Fury the stink eye, but Fury's dishing it right back. You can feel the tension in the air. And while that's going on, Otto Octavius has already snagged all the security codes, and Osborn's team is already ready to unleash their master plan. The stage is set for some serious fireworks. Back at Triskelion, Peter Parker is trying to have a chill phone call with Aunt May. Then, out of nowhere, an agent screams about a hack. Fury barks orders about shutting everything down, but before they can even finish that sentence, the lights go out. Total blackout. Peter Spider-Sense starts going bonkers, and then blam! Electro bursts in, zapping agents left and right. Sand starts pouring into the room, and before Peter can even think, a massive sand hammer sends him flying. The ceiling just implodes, and Green Goblin comes crashing down, laughing like his usual maniac self. Norman calls Peter his boy, and then hits Peter with a jolt of electricity. Now there's a rude awakening for our web slinger. What do you think of this sudden full-on assault? This looks like a nightmare for the good guys, right? Ultimate X-Men, Volume 1, Issue 39. So the X-Men find Jean Grey flat out in a field, totally wiped after she unleashed some serious pyro power on the enemy copter. Jean's clearly in a bad spot, pushing everyone away because she just wants to forget the whole fiery ordeal. Good old Nightcrawler teleports her back to the mansion, getting her squared away under Xavier's watchful eye. Meanwhile, Wolverine sniffs out Tara's location. Nightcrawler's all in, insisting he tags along because he knows the smell of Weapon X, and he's got his own bone to pick with those guys. Wolverine tries to pull the lone wolf act, but Cyclops steps in, laying down the law. This is a fight for all mutants, and they're joining the charge on Weapon X. Now that's a team up. Now, over at Tara's hideout, things are getting kind of messy. She's struggling to keep her operation running while her boss just wants to pull the plug, thinking they've blown too much cover, made way too much noise, putting Weapon X on blast. The crew's torn. Do they keep hunting or bail? And just as they're debating, a sudden chill sweeps through the hideout. Bam! The X-Men crash the party, telling Tara to throw in the towel. But Tara's having none of it. She takes out her own team before turning the gun on herself. Moments later, S.H.I.E.L.D. rolls in with Commander Dugan leading the charge. He lays into the X-Men, chewing them out for jumping into a mission that wasn't theirs. Dugan drops a bombshell. Ever since Wolverine's mug went public with the X-Men, they're basically a giant target, all thanks to Logan's checkered past. Back at the mansion, Jean is still trying to get her head straight after the powers went wild. She looks at Wolverine, and it's clear this whole chaotic mess has really messed with him too. He's looking for something, anything to hold on to, just trying to find some footing after all that went down. It's a heavy weight for anyone, even a guy like Logan. And what do you think about the fallout from this Weapon X confrontation? Xtreme X-Men, Volume 1, Issue 34. Our story kicks off at the Los Angeles airport where Sam Guthrie reconnects with his longtime friend Amara Aquila. She's still reeling from the recent death and resurrection. Amara's emotional turmoil causes her magma powers to flare, a signal that she's done with all the hiding. The two blast off for the X-Corps offices where a reunion with Roberta da Costa is soured by a shocking appearance of her ex-lover, Empath. An enraged Amara threatens to gut him where he stands, but Roberta steps in, demanding that they work together for the greater good of mutant kind. Outside, Roberta defends his decision to hire Empath, telling Sam that everyone deserves a second chance. Sam, however, is more concerned about the Maria DeConta incident, hinting that someone at X-Corps might be trying to pit humans and mutants against each other. At the same time, in the California courtroom, Rogue and Bishop are furious when a group of mutant delinquents who killed a family are set free. Rogue has no time to dwell on the injustice, however, as she's ambushed by villains and tracks them to the very same X-Corps building. Back at the X-Corps Gala, Sam and Amara are distracted by a sudden commotion. After a brutal fight, she discovers the villain's connection to X-Corps and has come for answers. She crashes her bike, steps out, and directly confronts Roberto, demanding to know what he's really doing in this organization. The truth is about to be revealed. All right, my archivists, that's a wrap up on another wild ride. And we've just witnessed some seriously spectacular stories, from Frank Castle's insane bazooka blasting trap for our heroes to Hulk's shocking discovery of the true identity of Mr. Blue. We also watched Tony Stark dive into the political fire as he takes on the role of Secretary of Defense, and we saw Peter Parker face down an unhinged Doc Ock. The chaos is real, and it's not letting up. But the story is far from over. Next time, the stakes will get even higher as we dive into the Fantastic Four 507 and see the conclusion of the authoritative action arc. We'll also check in with the cosmic side of things with Captain Marvel number 16 as we continue the Crazy Like a Fox arc, and join the Earth's mightiest heroes as they continue their desperate battle in Avenger number 74. Plus, the madness continues with Wolverine number 8 as his hunt for justice leads him down an even darker path. We'll cover all these and more as we continue our trek through 2004. We'll be back soon with more marvelous moments and mythical madness. Keep your eyes on those panels. And here's the complete rundown of everything that will be tackled next week. Same ordered time, same ordered omnibus.